Hey folks, this has been due for a bit, but I finally figured I'd get around to it, to just talking about what's been going on at Crit Hit. 2023 edition, I guess, since there's been a few years since the last one, and I don't know when the next one will be. But before I get into it, I do want to say a quick word to anyone new to the channel or curious. So, hi, I'm Arlian, or Arlie. For nearly 7 years, I've been running Crit Hit, a channel devoted to indie games and the devs surrounding them. Basically, I do reviews for titles new and old, interviews with the people that made them, and some niche stuff like how to make couch co-op work for non-Steam share games. All of which I do for a pretty simple reason. I just really like indie gaming. Part of it, doubtlessly, is that as someone with low income and, well, disabled, it's provided me the chance to pursue the hobby affordably. It's more than just that, though. Time and again, I've been floored by just innovative game mechanics, expansive and engrossing experiences, and some spectacular bits of storytelling, only to discover that no one around me has heard of these titles, and so I have no one to talk to about them. So, yeah, here I am. That said, I'm not just a hobbyist per se. I've actually been involved in the gaming industry in a few capacities. For a while, I was a quality assurance tester, ranging from small projects in the RPG Maker community to larger ones which have seen releases on Steam. Most recently, however, I've gotten a chance to work as a professional writer for a gaming outlet, and I'll admit that the experience was incredibly jarring because of just how much it clashed with what I thought a reviewer should be doing for their audience. See, what some of you might know, but I'm certain some of you suspect, is that the shallow and rushed quality of many reviews on mainstream sites isn't accidental. I'm not talking about the ones meant to provoke and trend via clickbait titles either. What I mean is those articles which feel like the reviewers only sunk a pair of items into a game at best. Because honestly, that is often the case. A while back, I worked at a fairly large site, and our expected turnaround time for an article was 3 days. There was no time to familiarize ourselves with the project prior. We were just thrown in at something on release and told to have at it. Now, this isn't too bad for smaller titles, but what about anything larger? What about an RPG like Chained Echoes or Sea of Stars? How about games that drastically change on a New Game Plus playthrough like Luca, Born of a Dream? Hell, even Baldur's Gate 3. When I make a review, I want to provide the people who read my words or who listen to my voice with a thorough idea of the game's merits and flaws. I want to get into the weeds and do my best to provide an in-depth look and even highlight moments where things may fall apart or break, all while avoiding spoilers. It's actually quite difficult in a lot of cases because of how some games have certain twists at the core of what they are. And if I wanted to continue making reviews I could be proud of, that meant something had to give. My social life went out the window, as did day-to-day maintenance around the house went on hold, and even sleep was set aside. It was thoroughly fucking awful, but I stuck with it for quite a while because I needed a job. Until I was asked to review Dragonair, a request that came with a number of very questionable stipulations. First off, I was not supposed to tell anyone that it was a pay-to-win gacha game, nor that it was, effectively, an idle game. I wasn't supposed to mention that it had any connection to ByteDance, and that it didn't have any connection to Dungeons & Dragons, despite the fact that characters that it's vending to are from Dungeons & Dragons. And lastly, I wasn't allowed to review it poorly. Yeah, all of that was a giant what the fuck, and just seemed like a gross breach of ethics, especially since I was obliged to mark it as a review. They did not want this to be a first look or anything else. They wanted this to be marked down as a review. And this is apparently a norm in the industry, at least for certain outlets, and an incredibly gross aspect that's been quietly normalized, and which has only reinforced my desire to run this channel, because honestly, it gives me an avenue to talk about games, and to say exactly what's on my mind. I can tackle what I want, when I want. I get to choose quirkier, smaller titles that the algorithm may not care for, to help people discover these things and have folks come along with me to see what I thought was interesting and whether or not I thought it was good at the end of the journey. That's what Crit Hit is, and that's part of why I finally decided to ask you folks for help. See, a part of what I've been wanting to fill you folks in on has been the changes that have hit the channel over the past year. First off, I've gone through a few editors. A lot of it was scheduling, though part of it was that Hop worked at the same journalism spot I did and burned out before I did. It was brutal. I'm hoping that my current one will be staying on for some time, but new parenthood is a thing. Well, that, and I admittedly am on a tight budget, and there's only so much work I can do with that. At this point, the amount of effort I put into thoroughly going through the games, editing scripts so they're not rambling messes, and going through press channels in an effort to contact developers has essentially turned all of this into a job of its own, which also involves some fairly intensive costs because I make sure to go out of my way to pay my editor. Still, it hasn't all been bad news. First off, I do want to give thanks to my viewers who have been commenting and liking the videos. It helps a great deal for them to get noticed by the algorithm, and honestly, I just love hearing from you folks and suggestions for what to tackle next. It's pretty easy to feel isolated doing this stuff, especially because of how focused I am on all of these little projects. So yeah, honestly, I appreciate it a lot. Secondly, though, if you like my stuff, it would help me a substantial amount if you could share them. Whether it's on the Discord, on Reddit, on Twitter, just getting these videos out there makes such an incredible difference at this juncture. Thirdly, I just want to say I currently count myself as pretty blessed since I recently got up to 3 followers on my Patreon. Thanks again, Green Witch Babby, Andy Noted, and Shrimp Mania. You're literally putting food on my table. If you'd like to help out this way, you can check the description of this video or the pin for a link to it. I try and post unreleased views there, but currently not much of a backlog anymore because of how things have slowed down. You do get access to a secret Discord channel though and associated role. That said, if hanging out in a Discord isn't your cup of tea, nor is a Patreon sub, you can also support me in the form of buying merch. If you're a fan of the cute new logo, you can buy a shirt, a coffee mug, and even a mouse pad with the Crit Cat plastered on it through the merch house link in the description and again on the pinned message. Quite honestly, I'm just hoping I can reach a point where I can get a bit more freedom to buy more food and pay my editor more money so I can work on side projects more comfortably. For instance, for the longest time, I've been bouncing the idea of doing a podcast after kidnapping a suitable co-host. One idea I actually really liked was talking about the Banner Saga games, since there's something fascinating about the way they evolved mechanically as they progressed forward. Just game to game, they changed despite being all very tightly interconnected and carrying that save forward. And it's very interesting, and all the quirks of its storytelling in the way that it goes forward. It's the sort of thing that feels incredibly daunting to try and do as a formal review or a joint review series, but honestly, it feels that it would be sort of cozy as a more informal experiment of something to just talk back and forth with someone about. Not that I'm discounting the in-depth review, but that'd be a project. It'd be incredibly involved since it would require me to play and beat all 3 games again. But that is a good example of the sort of stuff that I wish I did have a bit more freedom to fiddle with. Though, on the subject of freedom, since my editor is a bit tied up at times, I will be toying with a few more first looks and versus episodes than normal to give you guys sneak peeks at what I'm playing / writing about in the background. Or that I previewed while I was a judge for Canada's 2023 Indie Cup, since that was a thing. I was a judge for a bunch of indie games. It's pretty cool. But yeah, basically, I'm going to try and ensure that y'all have some stuff to sink your teeth into no matter what. So yeah, I guess the big TLDR thing is, thanks for hearing me out. I hope things get a bit easier since I love making content. And if you do choose to support me, thank you again. This has been the state of Crit Hit 2023. I'm gonna head off to Pet Fumble and also Pet Yzma because she has been meowing the entirety of this episode. Those squeaks are her.